This video is sponsored by Mark 7 Car Wash Equipment, providing clean, dry, shiny cars for over 50 years. Visit mark7.net for more information.
Hello and welcome back to another episode of Unscripted, Carwash.com's video interview series that connects you with market leaders. Today on our Unscripted video, we welcome back a car washing and detailing consultant with over 50 years of industry experience in both markets, Bud Abraham. Hello, Bud. Nice to see you again, and thanks for doing this with me.
Hello, Rich. Glad to be here. Thank you for asking.
Sounds good. So, Bud, you've written a few great articles for us over the past few months, and one of those articles that you've written discuss the topic of pricing detailing services and translating value over price, right? So you've said that price is never an obstacle unless you make it one. Can you elaborate? What exactly do you mean by that?
Well, just what it says is that I think detailers don't realize that they're in control of price. They seem to feel, in my opinion, that the consumer is controls price, that they don't want to pay. Well, there's a couple of things. If that's the kind of consumer that they're dealing with, then they got the wrong customer. And price in any industry, what I've discovered over the years is you ask any salesman what his biggest obstacle in selling it is, and he'll tell you price. And in reality, I sat in two seminars over the years where the person conducting the seminar asked that question, and everybody, of course, said in the session said price. And by the end of the session, they realized that they were wrong, and that really the person doing the selling has control, and they can control the objection of price if they know how to sell.
Okay. Now, there seems to be a bit of a debate, a conflict, if you will, among detailers as to whether they should post prices on a menu, let's say, or just provide estimates only. Where do you stand on this debate? What's your opinion of this question here?
Well, I've learned personally firsthand that posting prices closes the sales window before it even gets open. And what I mean by that is that when a customer sees a price, they make a decision, oh, this is too expensive. I'm not coming in, I'm not calling. Well, the window's closed. You don't get a chance to sell. Now, it's not that you're trying to avoid telling the customer price, but you've got to have a chance to talk to the customer. So when you post prices on a menu board in your detail shop or on your website or on a sales menu or in an ad, you're letting the customer make a choice, you're letting a customer make a choice before they know what you're selling or what they need. You're the detailer is the expert. They are the ones that can analyze the car and know what the car needs and be able to, or they should be able to show the customer what the car needs and why and what they're going to charge. My classic example of what caused me to take all my prices down and off everything I was promoting was I had a detail shop in a big car care center, and there were five or six different automotive related businesses, one being a full service car wash. And the car wash was perpendicular to my detail shop. So when customers drove in to the waiting line, they would look across the driveway and they could see right into the front of my detail shop, which is 4 bays with an outdoor wash bay, and had a big sign across the top of the building, the Detail Plus and carpet shampooing, polishing, waxing, that type of thing. So they saw that, and I would see them. I'd watch them. If I was in the office, I'd watch them. They'd look over. You could see them looking over. Sometimes after they got to the cashier and they got their car, they made their sale, they'd get out and they'd walk across the driveway to our detail shop. some of them would look in the window, see the price board, they'd turn around and walk away. Others would come in, look at the price board, walk, I'd say, how are you? And they'd, no, just looking, and they'd walk away. Some would ask for a price menu, a service menu, which I would give them, and they'd leave. And I'm thinking, gee, how come I can't, what's the problem here? There's something wrong. I happened to be talking to a friend of mine who was a marketing expert, and I explained to him that situation, and he kind of smiled at me. He's the one that used the phrase. He said, Bud, you're closing the sales window before it's open. And I said, what do you mean? And he said, the customer sees your price, he makes a decision, and he walks away. You don't get a chance to talk to him. So that was all it took for me, was to take the prices down and off my menus. And now I was in control. So when a customer came in, can I help you? And he said, you have a price menu or et cetera. I'd say, well, is the car here? And he'd say yes, or he'd say, yeah, it's at the car wash, but I could bring it over afterwards. I said, fine. Then I could sell to the need of the car versus the having the posted prices. And, again, when they ask for a price, I would say, well, I really need to see the car to determine, what services you need. I'll ask you a question, Joe. When you go to the mechanic, does he have posted prices for auto service when you take the car? No,
they really just have the hourly rate or something like that. They don't break down the prices of the service. You're correct.
And same with the body shop.
Correct. Yep.
Yeah. I mean, you go to the dentist, you go to the doctor, they don't post their prices. Well, right. Some of those schlocky guys that, I guess where they call them the advertising dentists, they put $49.95 for that type. But I mean, in general, most services, and especially automotive related services, don't post prices. You go there, you give an opinion of what's wrong with the car. They diagnose the car and then tell you what's wrong, and then tell you what it's going to cost to fix it.
Sure.
In fact, I just did that the other day with my mechanic. I said, I think I need new brake pads. And so he drove the car for a while, and he got out with his little flashlight, looked at the pads, and said, no, you really don't need brake pads. He said, you probably have overheated your rotor, and it's warped a little bit, so that when you put your foot on the brake, and that bumping you feel is not really anything to do with the brake pads. It's you warp the rotor. So, if you can stand the bumping, I'd drive it, for another 10,000 miles, and then come in and we can take care of the pads. So that was really good consultative salesman. And then I asked him, I said, well, what do you think it's going to cost to do the rotors and pads? He said, probably $300 or $400. And okay, I mean, I knew that I needed it done. I mean, I understood what, he explained to me and the problem. And so then I realized I had a need. And he's always been fair with me. And even if he hadn't been someone I was familiar with, he had enough knowledge to make me realize that he knew what he was talking about.
So when you say, and you just mentioned it, consultative selling, how can detailers, once they draw a customer into the business, how can they apply consultative selling tactics?
Well, I think one thing I left out of the last answer there was, I think, and you mentioned it when you said, sometimes they post an hourly rate.
Right.
And, I would say that 75, 80% of the detailers that I've exposed to don't understand an hourly rate. And if they do, they just pick it out of the sky. Oh, I charge $50 an hour. Well, I said, based on what? Well, then you stymie them, because they don't really know what they're based, and they get defensive when you ask them why they came up with this number, $75 an hour, $100 an hour. What are you basing that on? The reality is that an hourly rate is based on your operating costs, you know, rent, your burden, your rent, your taxes, all those things that you got to pay, your utilities, your labor, your advertising. I mean, everything goes into that. And what a detailer really needs to do is to go to an accountant or a bookkeeper, somebody that can help them to determine what they should be charging by the hour. And the hourly rate is based on the expenses that they have, plus, you know, what they want to make as an owner operator. And you know that gets a little complicated, because if they're just a business owner and don't do the work, that's different than a guy doing the work. So he really has got to take a salary. If he's just a businessman, he's paying everybody else to do the work, and then he's going to take a salary. So it gets a little complicated. That's why they need, you know, to talk to an operator, because once you have your costs of operation in front of you. I have a friend that owns a bunch of car washes, and he used to be real anal about not raising his prices. Boy, I mean, he just, you know, he'd go from $4 to $4.25, and you know, we'd talk. He said, I'm not sure what's going to happen if I do that. And then finally he'd go to $4.25, and then finally he'd go to $4.50. I mean, it was like pulling teeth, you know, because he really wanted to keep a low price. Well, when I was joking with him the other day, I says, boy, you know, the last time I looked at your prices, you were $6. Now you're $9. He says, well, he says, I know what it cost me to operate. You know, labor increasing. I think Oregon has got almost $15 an hour minimum wage. And so once you know what it costs you to operate, you know, you have no compunction about charging what you have to charge to open the business or to sell your services. So that, you know, that's really important. Now, once you've got that in your head, you've got an hourly rate. Then what you do with the customer, when I said consultative selling, well, use a little cliche. We have a term I use when I consult with people, ABC selling. And what do you mean by ABC? So, well, it's not the basics of selling. It's ask relevant questions, build the sales ticket, close the sale. And basically, when that customer comes in and says, how much to detail my car? Is, well, let's go out and take a look at the car, Mr. DiPaolo. And so I walk around the exterior with the customer. I reinforce his perceived need that the car needs to be polished and waxed by showing him scratches, scuffs. I show him things I can't take out, or if there's a rock chip and we do rock chip repair, you know, I can sell him paint touch-up at that point in time and explain why we need to do that, beside other than it being unsightly. Right. And then I open the door to whatever door it is, the front driver's side door, and hopefully the interior is dirty. And I say to him, would you like the interior clean? Well, he might ask again, how much, or how, you know, that type of thing, or yes, how much. And I'll say, well, let me finish my evaluation. May I open the trunk and the hood? Open the trunk and the hood. And if they're dirty, again, would you like to have the, well, they are dirty. Okay. So then when I get through that whole process, I say, well, what I'd recommend is our full detail, which includes this. You want to create value. So I tell them all the things we're going to do to the exterior and interior of the car, including the engine and the trunk. And then I say, you know, that'll be such and such a price. Well, at that point, that's consultative selling. You showed him the need, and he can make a decision not to buy. If you get him through the whole process, him or her through the whole process, and they're a little hesitant when you quote the price, you can say, well, I'll tell you what, we can, you know, your engine really isn't that dirty. I'll tell you what, we won't do the trunk, and I'll do the engine at no cost. I'll include that in I'll give them another price without the engine and the trunk. And I may include one of the services just to make it more attractive. During that process, if he says, no, I don't want the interior cleaned, well, that tells me I'm not even going to try to sell him on the trunk or the engine. So I'll just go back to the exterior. I'll tell him everything that we're going to do, which includes is a very thorough wash, cleaning the wheels, taking the tar and grease off, doing the door jambs, washing the windows in and out, and then buffing, polishing, and waxing the paint finish. And then I'll tell him the price again. And again, the price should be based on your hourly rate times the estimated hours to do the work. Now, one caveat to that is if you check your competition's prices in the area and you say, well, typically it takes me 4 hours to do a full detail, my hourly rate where I'm making a hefty good profit is $50 an hour, that's $200. But I see all my competitors or people I would consider good competitors, they're charging, $250, $300 for the same detail. By all means, if that's what the going rate is, charge $300, but never charge less than the $200, because that's what it's costing you to operate your facility per hour. Does that make sense?
Yeah, for sure. Yeah, you're selling the value and the need, and let that determine the price of the service. Also, the competition in the area, keeping an eye on that. So certainly all good points. Now, Bud, when you have the customer face to face and you're doing all this consultative selling, how does a good sales presentation fit into the equation and into this selling process?
Well, I guess I've sort of alluded to it, but not really specifically said it. Thank you for the question, Rich. I think it's important that you sell need and you sell value. The customer comes to you, why? Because they have a perceived need. I mean, they don't know exactly what it is. They may have a perception of what detailing is. To some, it's a full service car wash. That's detailing, In fact, some detailers refer to what they do as detailing, and as all it is what we do in a full service car wash. Vacuum the car and clean the windows and that sort of thing. So you have to build, as I was telling you, in the ABC sales approach, you have to create need.
Yeah.
All right. Then the second thing is you have to convince the customer or build on the customer's perception that you can provide the value that he wants. Oftentimes salespeople will tell you, sales consultants will tell you, when a person objects to your price, it isn't that they're objecting to price, that you've not convinced them that what you're asking for is worth what you're selling. In other words, the value. So you've got to create value, and value comes not only from your verbal knowledge of a car's condition, but also the presentation of your shop, the presentation of your people, your presentation. You got to look like a professional. You got to look like, well, what are we selling? Cleanliness. And yet a lot of detail shops look like pigsties. And, and customers are not as accustomed to going to detail shops as they are to repair shops. I mean, most auto repair shops are frightening. They look like the dark hole of Calcutta. They're just parts laying everywhere, but the guys do a great job. I think our neighborhood mechanic, when I grew up as a kid, his shop was kind of dark. The floors were dark and greasy. The walls were kind of dark. I mean, it wasn't disorganized as most shops were, but I mean, it was a dark, dreary place. But Joe was the best mechanic in Portland, and it took you 6 weeks to get an appointment with him. So, he had created the value. People knew he was good, and So that's what I think about. It's a matter of selling need and then selling value. And that goes back to what we were saying. Price is not an issue unless you make it an issue. Price should come at the very end of the selling process. It shouldn't come at you see now why it's so silly to have price at the beginning of the sales opportunity.
Sure, for sure. So, but regardless of the detailer's skill in selling the value and need, there's always going to be customers that just object to price regardless, right? So how can detail business owners overcome price objections?
Well, you have to determine exactly what the objection is. In other words, are they objecting to price or are they objecting to value? If they, I guess the biggest one is, well, I can get it done down the street for less money. But, your first reaction is, well, fine, go down the street. But obviously you wouldn't, some detailers unfortunately would respond to the customer that way. But normally what you have to do, they're just testing you. So, you have to determine, it could be price because they don't have any money, or it could be price objection could be legitimate, that they think it's too expensive, or they don't have enough money. Maybe it's a company car and they can only spend $100 and you're asking $175. So you have to determine, why are they objecting to price, and to determine what the problem is. And, that could be any number of things, and you just have to be prepared, in your mind as you develop a sales presentation. You need to be prepared to be able to answer whatever the objection is, and you need to ask questions. Talk less and let the customer talk more, and they'll eventually tell you. If you let them talk, they'll eventually tell you what their true objection is. Or the wife, the woman driver that comes in, she doesn't want to say, my husband won't let me spend the money, or he'll pick on me. I mean, that seems like a lot of money. I don't know, she's thinking to herself, oh gosh, he'll really get after me if I spend $200 for a detail, even though the car needs it. So, you can do things like value added. With women, they certainly understand Scotch guarding or anti-stain fabric protectant. If the interior of the car has got fabric seats and certainly carpet, then you can throw in an anti-stain treatment. Now, well, geez, that's a lot. I sell that for $99.95. Well, yeah, you sell that for $99.95 with a guarantee that it won't stain. You throw this in for free. You don't mention the guarantee. You're using a few ounces. I mean, I'm not sure. I've never figured it out when you spray it. But I mean, if you use 2 or 3 ounces of chemical on a whole interior, you're giving them $100 in value for free. So that's another way to, just many ways. You have to be creative. It's pretty difficult to come up with every possible answer, but you have to determine what the objection is. You got to probe the questioning in a nice way with the customer, and not in an intimidating way. You don't want to get them defensive in the least bit. That's the problem. Detailers get defensive when the customer challenges their price, and the reason they do that is because they don't know what their price is based on. I mean, if you knew it cost you $75 an hour for every hour that your shop was open, you're going to charge $75 an hour. And if you start cutting the $75 down, whose pocket are you taking that out of? Your pocket. Your employees are going to get paid, and the electric company is going to get paid, and the chemical companies are going to get paid. But you're the guy that's going to suffer if you go lower than your costs. So you don't get defensive when you know what it costs you to operate your business.
Okay. All right, sounds good. Well, do you have anything else to add about this topic of price and overcoming some objections that detailers are seeing out there in the market?
Well, I don't think so. I think you've asked me, you know, the problem is we've covered actually the answers in several of the questions you asked me as we went along. I hope that the detailers and the car wash people that have detail shops can, you know, can pick out of what I said to them and maybe listen to this presentation again. And then I think too, don't you still have the article that I wrote originally? I think it was called How to Price Detail Services.
Yes, we still have the article up on carwash.com as well as several of your articles over the years, and we'll be posting this video interview with that article so folks could read the article and see the interview in one URL there.
Yeah, in fact, here I was just looking. It was I think the article was posted. It says September 10th, 2020.
Okay. Yep.
Yeah. So if they go to that article, it more or less in an orderly fashion answers all the things or provides the information that we provided in this video.
Correct. Yep. Just another example. We know our readers' reading habits are changing, so we try to provide the information in multiple formats here, Bud, and you certainly help us do that. So thank you for taking a few minutes to discuss the topic with me, and it was great seeing you again, Bud.
Okay. Thank you, Rich.